What kind of person calls the cops over a few extra chickens? I'll tell you who. Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed dictator of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. A woman whose voice could curdle milk and whose glare could wilt a cactus. My name's Jake Ramsey, and I've been running my family's ranch on the edge of town for a decade, raising chickens, goats, and a few dreams of freedom. The trouble started when Karen, all 300 pounds of her, stormed up my driveway last spring. Her clipboard clutched like a weapon, demanding I tear down my new chicken coop because it violated some obscure HOA rule about visible livestock structures. I laughed. Big mistake. Her eyes narrowed, and I swear I saw hellfire flicker in them. You'll regret this, Ramsey, she hissed before waddling back to her golf cart. I didn't think much of it. I should have. 2 weeks later, I woke to the sound of sirens and boots crunching on my gravel drive. Sheriff's deputies, 3 of them, stood at my gate with a warrant, claiming my ranch was a public nuisance. Karen stood behind them, arms crossed, smirking like she'd just won the lottery. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. I'd dealt with worse in my days as a Green Beret deserts. Gunfire. Betrayal. This was just a nosy neighbor with too much time and a vendetta. I invited the deputies in, showed them the coop, pristine and legal by county standards. They left, apologizing, but Karen's smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl that promised war. That was the opening salvo, and I knew she wouldn't stop. She didn't. Over the next month, she escalated complaints about my goats bleeding, my tractor's noise, even the offensive smell of my compost pile. Each time, she'd call the cops, and each time, they'd leave with nothing to show for it. But I wasn't naive. Karen was president of the HOA, and in Willow Creek. That gave her pull money, connections, and a knack for twisting rules into knots. I started losing sleep, checking my fences at midnight, wondering when her next move would come. Then came the letter. Official HOA stationery, demanding I pay a $5,000 fine for unapproved agricultural activity or face a lien on my property. That's when I knew this wasn't just about chickens. Karen wanted my land, my home, my life. She'd been eyeing my 20 acres for years, whispering to developers about turning it into condos. I wasn't just fighting a bully. I was fighting a machine. I called up 2 old Green Beret buddies, Mike and Tara, who'd seen me through worse scraps than this. They showed up the next day. No questions asked. Their eyes sharp and their gear packed. We got your back, Jake, Mike said, his voice low and steady. Tara just grinned, her knife collection glinting in her duffel. We weren't planning violence, but we were ready for anything. The plan was simple: dig into Karen's game, find her weak spot, and hit it hard. We started asking around town, talking to neighbors who'd been burned by her reign of terror. Turns out, Karen wasn't just a nuisance, she was a tyrant. She'd find old Mrs. Carter for her rose garden, threaten the Wilsons' kid over a skateboard ramp, and strong-armed half the HOA board into submission. But the real kicker came from Tom, the town clerk, who let slip that Karen had been fudging HOA records, skimming dues for personal expenses. That was our ammunition. We just needed proof. Mike hacked into the HOA's public financial portal, not exactly legal. But War's war and found discrepancies, payments to a shell company tied to Karen's cousin. Tara, meanwhile, charmed a disgruntled HOA board member into spilling more dirt. Karen had been strong-arming votes to push her condo deal through, promising kickbacks to loyalists. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was corrupt to the core. But we needed more than whispers to take her down. Then came the twist. The kind of thing that makes your stomach lurch. One night, while staking out Karen's house, Tara spotted a familiar face leaving her back door, Deputy Harris, one of the cops who'd shown up at my ranch. He wasn't in uniform, and the way he glanced around before slipping into his car screamed guilt. We followed him to a diner on the edge of town, where he met Karen's cousin, the same guy linked to the shell company. They were in it together, Karen, her cousin, and a dirty cop. My heart sank. This wasn't just about my ranch anymore. It was personal. Harris had been one of my high school buddies, a guy I trusted. Betrayal stings worse than any fine. We regrouped at the ranch, laying out our options. Mike wanted to go public, leak the evidence to the local paper. But I knew Karen would spin it, play the victim, and come after me harder. Tara suggested something bolder: confront her at the next HOA meeting, where the whole board and half the neighborhood would be watching. It was risky, but it felt right. We'd hit her where it hurt her reputation, her power, her throne. The meeting was set for Friday, and we spent the week prepping like it was a mission. Mike printed financial records. Tara coached me on keeping my cool, and I worked on a speech that had cut through Karen's lies like a blade. By the time Friday rolled around, my nerves were electric, but I was ready. The HOA clubhouse was packed, the air thick with tension. Karen sat at the head of the table, her usual smug grin in place, unaware of the storm coming her way. I stood up, cleared my throat, and started talking. I laid out the facts: her fines, her threats, her shady deals holding up the records Mike had pulled. The room went silent, then erupted. Neighbors shouted questions. Board members squirmed. Karen's face turned purple, her voice shrill as she denied everything, calling me a liar, a troublemaker, a disgrace to the community. That's when Tara stepped in, calm as a sniper, and played a recording from the disgruntled board member, confessing Karen's vote-rigging scheme. The crowd gasped. Karen's smirk vanished, replaced by panic. She tried to storm out, but Mike blocked the door, arms crossed, his presence like a wall. The board demanded answers, and when Karen stammered, Deputy Harris, who'd been lurking in the back, slipped out like a coward. The room turned on her, neighbors recounting their own stories of her bullying. It was chaos, but it was beautiful. Karen's empire was crumbling, and we'd lit the fuse. The fallout was swift and brutal. By Monday, the county sheriff Harris's boss had launched an investigation. Thanks to an anonymous tip, ours, with all the evidence we'd gathered. Harris was suspended. Karen's cousin was hauled in for questioning, and Karen herself was ousted as HOA president in a special vote. The board, desperate to save face, rescinded my fine and issued a public apology. But I wasn't done. I wanted justice, not just for me, but for everyone she'd crushed under her heel. We organized a town hall, where neighbors shared their stories: Mrs. Carter's roses, the Wilson's kid, countless others who'd lived in fear of Karen's wrath. The local paper ran a front-page story. HOA tyrant toppled. And suddenly, Willow Creek was buzzing with hope instead of dread. Karen tried to fight back, hiring a lawyer and spinning tales of being targeted by jealous neighbors. But the evidence was ironclad. Her cousin flipped, spilling details of their scheme to funnel HOA funds into the condo deal. By the end of the month, Karen was facing charges fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of power. The day they cuffed her in front of her own McMansion, I stood across the street, not gloating, just watching. She looked small, deflated, her venom drained. It wasn't about revenge. It was about righting a wrong. Mike and Tara were there too, their quiet nods saying more than words ever could. We'd fought as a team, and we'd won as a team. The ranch was safe, my chickens clucking happily in their coop, my goats blissfully unaware of the war we'd waged. But the real victory wasn't the land or the animals, it was the community. Neighbors started talking again, helping each other, rebuilding what Karen had torn apart. Mrs. Carter even brought me a rose from her garden, a tiny red bloom that felt like a medal. Looking back, I think about what makes a home. It's not just a patch of dirt or a house you own outright. It's the people around you, the ones who stand up when it counts, who fight for what's right even when the odds are stacked against them. Karen thought she could bully us into submission. But she forgot one thing: you don't mess with a man's home, especially when he's got a team like mine. I'm no hero, just a guy who loves his chickens and his freedom. But I learned something out there in the dust and the shouting: when you stand your ground, when you fight for what's yours, you're not just saving a ranch. You're saving a way of life. And that's worth everything. End.